Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to change the timing belt and the water pump on a single overhead cam EJ25. Behind me we have a lovely little Forester that we're going to be doing this job on. So it's really not as bad as a lot of people think when it comes to doing timing belt jobs on Subarus. Single overhead cam engines are significantly easier than dual overhead cam because you only have 2 cam sprockets versus having 4. So it really shouldn't be that bad if you're going to be doing this at home. So this is our specimen in question today. This is a naturally aspirated EJ25. The Foresters are a little funky with their radiator setups because they typically tend to sit a little bit taller and the engines tend to sit a little bit lower, so you have these hoses that wrap down to the engine down there. So what we need to initially start with before we even get into the timing stuff, we need to drain coolant out of this, pull the radiator out of the way, and then get down and get the serpentine belts off for the alternator and the air conditioning. Once we have those out of the way, then we can start removing the crank pulley, removing the timing covers, and getting all that out. Now for parts, we are using ASIN's TKF001 kit. A lot of people seem weary of these ASIN kits, but ASIN makes all of the parts for Subaru when it comes to timing stuff. The tensioners, the pulleys, the water pumps, it's all manufactured by ASIN, still has the Japanese stamp on it. Subaru just buys it directly from ASIN and then re-puts their logo on it. ASIN also gives you this lovely little sheet with their timing belt kits. I will link this kit down below for any other single overhead cam engine owners out there who may be doing this as well. This kit will come with the routing for how to set up the timing belt, how to align everything, all of your torque specs for what you need to tighten down all your pulleys to, so it shouldn't be too bad. For tools, you're not gonna need anything really major. If you have impacts or anything like that, you'll definitely want them. You'll need a 3/8 torque wrench, a 22mm socket for the crank bolt, an assortment of 10s, 12s, 14s, a 17mm wrench. You may need a pop clip puller tool, a 3/8 ratchet, a small extension, and that really should be it for what you're gonna be needing. To start things off, let's get coolant out of this thing. Now, if you look on the bottom of the radiator, way down there, you're gonna see that little nipple right kind of where my finger's at. There should be a petcock coming off of that, which is like a wing nut. You loosen the wing nut, and that's gonna let all the coolant come out of the radiator, and we're just gonna put it into this bucket. We're not gonna be reusing this coolant. We are gonna be replacing the coolant. If you would like to reuse your coolant, you definitely can, but for us, we will be replacing it. So let's go ahead, loosen up that petcock, and get all the coolant out of this radiator, so that way we can get that thing out of here. Okay. Drain. I want to loosen it all the way because it's going to make an absolute mess. So I'm just going to kind of let it dribble drabble out for a couple minutes, and then once some of the coolant's gotten out, we'll pop off the radiator cap to displace the air in the cooling system, and that should flow a lot faster. I'll just try to mitigate the mess. So while that's draining, let's actually jump up top and get the serpentine belts off and start clearing out some room to get down to the timing covers. Have a cover on your pulley setup. You're going to want to remove it. This one has a 10mm here, right in the middle, and then there's one more right over here that I'm gonna have to grab. Take that guy out of the way. To get this serpentine belt off for the alternator, what we are gonna do is go ahead and if you lift up the belt right here, you're gonna see a little bolt right where my finger's at, and that's gonna be your tension bolt for keeping the alternator bolted up, so we're gonna loosen that. You don't need to take it off. And then you've got this guy right here, which we already loosened, and then you're just gonna drive this and loosen this, and it's gonna drive the alternator down. Once the alternator is driven down enough, you can go ahead and just pull this first belt off, like that. For the AC belt, you're gonna have this little tension guy right here. So if you look down here, all the way down there, you're gonna see a 12mm nut, and then you're gonna see a 12mm bolt right here. You're gonna loosen that bottom 12mm nut, then you're gonna loosen this, and that's gonna pull tension off of this guy. Then once we have the belt out of the way, we're gonna loosen up these two 12s holding this bracket to the block, get that out of the way, and then all of our belts will be free. From there, then we can kind of focus back on the radiator. We are gonna have to disconnect the fans for this, which is gonna be one clip located on this side, on the side of the radiator, and then another one on the side of the radiator on the driver's side underneath of this coolant overflow. The car was just driven here, so this is still hot, but it's got a pressure relief, so it shouldn't spray or anything like that. And it should all just come out of the petcock. Just like that. If your car has been running, it is hot, and you don't have any way of pressure relieving the system, do not open this. You will spray yourself and you're not gonna have a fun time. So now that we have this off, we're gonna let that continue to drain and pop off these 2 radiator hoses up top. We have 2 on the bottom also, and then we'll take out these radiator stays and get this radiator out of here. I have learned with these clamps, don't use electronic tools for these. I have seen these stripped so many times. And always put the clamps back on the same spot where you found them and where you took them off. Pull off this radiator hose. All right, pull off this other radiator hose, which is arguably going to make a mess. Come up here, undo the radiator stays. Move the power steering line kind of up and out of the way. And we should just be able to pull this guy up and out, just like that. So with our radiator out of the way, you can see we have a ton more room in here to be able to get at things now. So now we can easily remove our AC pulley, get our crank pulley off, and then get our timing covers off and start changing timing. There is that guy. And then we can take off this. So when you get to the crank bolt, if you're ever at a spot where it feels like it's stuck or you can't get it off, one trick you can do, normally I just zap them off. One trick you can do is you can put the car in the highest gear and break it free that way. You're not gonna cause any damage, the car will be fine. Or Company 23 does make a tool to be able to hold the crank pulley as well to make life a little bit easier for you. But it can be stubborn. Normally I just use my electric impacts, and for the most part it'll zap them off no problem. She wants to come off. You don't want to pry on it if you can avoid it. I have a tool to pull it, but for the most part you can kind of wiggle them free a little bit. There we go. Crank pulley off. Now we have access to our timing covers. So with the timing cover, for this car, it's 2 pieces. So we've got this big piece here, and then on the driver's side, we have 1 small piece, and it's just held on with some 10 mils. So we're just gonna take all the 10 mils off, get the timing cover off, then we can have access to the timing. So if you come up in your engine bay here, let me set up my flashlight in a way where it won't completely fall. Right on the crank sprocket, you'll see that white line, and if you follow it back, you'll see that little indented line in the crank sprocket. On the oil pump, you're gonna find another line that's very similar to that. You're gonna line those up. Over here on the timing cover, you're gonna see that little blue mark. There's an indented line there, and then there's another one in the timing cover. As you guys can see, this one is off time by about a tooth. Same thing. On that cam gear, you're also gonna see that there is a small line on it. You're just gonna line the lines up. So now that we're in time, we're gonna go ahead and start pulling off timing components. So I always start with that red pulley down there, and then I'll pull off this one, then I'll pull off the tensioner, then I'll pull off the cog, then we'll take off the water pump, and then we'll put the new water pump on with our new gasket, and we'll start putting all of our new pulleys on, torquing them down, get the belt on, and pretty much do everything that we just did in the reverse order to get this thing back together. Like I said, doing timing belt jobs on these aren't too bad. It's just a little, if you've never done it before, you get it. It can be a little bit daunting. Start with the red pulley on the bottom. Come up, grab this one. Go ahead and pull the belt off. This engine came out of an automatic transmission car. And the only reason you can tell is because there's no timing belt guides. On manual transmission cars, which this car is, it's been swapped, there is timing belt guides that hold the belt down. So if you were to stall the car out or anything like that, it's not gonna jump timing. So do keep that in mind. It is kind of specific. We had a small snag on this, and this is why it matters when you buy a timing belt kit for a naturally aspirated engine, a turbo engine, automatic transmission, manual transmission. On these naturally aspirated 2.5 liters, the automatic transmission cars came with oil coolers. As you guys can see right down there, there is an oil cooler on this car. And they also did not come with timing belt guides. So this engine came from an automatic transmission car. It's been swapped into this manual transmission car. And on the water pump specifically, there is no provision on the manual transmission water pump for an oil cooler port. So with that being said, I called the owner, I talked to him, I asked him, hey, do you want to just reuse this water pump? No one local really had any in stock, unfortunately, so we couldn't just go get another one. So the water pump feels fine. It looks relatively new-ish. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up everything behind the timing cover here. We're gonna start getting everything else put back on. The driver's side cam was about a tooth out of time, so we'll get that fixed as well, get all new timing components on here and get this thing running strong again. But that's why it does matter for manual transmission versus like automatic transmissions. There are subtle differences on the engine that actually make the timing belt kits different. So keep that in mind when you're going to buy your parts. I'll link below manual transmission and automatic transmission timing belt kits for these naturally aspirated 2.5s. Try to clean up some schmoo a little bit. Let's start getting our new pulleys on. Brand new timing belt tensioner. That'll go in right here. Our cogged pulley that'll go on the water pump right here. We have our upper pulley here. We need to bring it in time a little bit more. Right there. You just want to make sure that all your guys are perfectly in time. Otherwise, you're gonna have a real bad day. Now this is one I wanted to talk about for a minute on the timing belt. So these timing belts, I see a lot of people get confused on them. You're gonna see indentations, you're gonna see, well, you're not gonna see indentations, you're gonna see marks on these. On these marks, never reference these for timing. You are only going to reference these marks for installation and installation only. The yellow dashed line close to the wording is gonna go on the crankshaft. So that yellow line is gonna be your crankshaft one. If you come down the timing belt, you're gonna have a solid one right there. That is going to be your driver's side cam. If you keep coming down the timing belt, you're gonna find another one. It's gonna be your passenger side cam. These lines are going to line up with the timing marks on installation only. After the car's been ran, after you turn the car over to verify your timing marks, never go off of the belt again. It will not give you any type of reference anymore. The marks on the belt are only for installation. Don't stress it. You're gonna go off of the cams and the crank sprocket to make sure that you're still in time, not the belt. Now we're gonna start feeding our belt in here. We're gonna get it on the crankshaft to start with, go over the water pump and then come underneath of the cog pulley here. I'm gonna have to take this pulley back off. Come up here and get this guy on his home. When you're going to put these pulleys on, make sure that the bolt is going in straight. The last thing you want to do is cross thread one of these pulley bolts going in. So take your time with it. You're gonna have to pull the belt up and over the pulley and slide the pulley under the belt before you thread it in. So that way everything is in line. You're gonna have to do that with both of the pulleys on the passenger side of the engine. Do the top pulley first, followed by the bottom pulley, and you should be able to do it no problem. Like I said, just take your time, make sure the bolts are going in straight, and make sure you do not cross thread anything. So, you guys may have seen the order that we just did that. Kind of sucked, but everything is still in time. So let's actually torque all these down, and then I'll kind of walk you through all of this goodness, all that goodness. Pulley 1, 26 to 32, we're gonna go 28. So they're all 26 to 32 with the exception of the tensioner. The tensioner is going to be exactly 29. We have our new timing in here. So as you guys can see right here, we are lined up with our black mark there, as well as on the cam gear on the front. I fixed this side so it's all actually in time now, from the blue line to the yellow line all the way to the timing gear, and then all the way over here on the crank, everything else is still lined up. So now that we've got all this in here, we're gonna go ahead and pull this little grenade pin out, and that's gonna tension the tensioner right there. So we have everything torqued down, grenade pin set. I like to let it sit for a minute, and then we'll turn the engine over a couple times to make sure that everything's still in time. If it's all in time, we can put our timing covers back on and start reassembling this engine. Keep these. These are nice to keep around if you have to retension a tensioner in the future. They work nice to be able to do it. Now we're gonna turn the engine over to make sure that we're all still in time. I'm gonna turn it over twice. Try to go slow. I have had an instance where the belt has jumped on a brand new setup because the timing belt tensioner wasn't fully tensioned. Right there. And we are still in time, baby. So all of our timing marks still line up. We got good tension on our belt here. We have all of our pulleys torqued down. So at this point, we can toss our timing cover back on. Give our timing cover a quick cleaning. Get that guy set back on there. Cleaned up this timing cover as well. Beautiful. With our timing covers back on, we'll take out our crank bolt here, put our harmonic balancer back on. We can put our AC stuff on, get this thing put back together, radiator in, new fluid, burp it, go test drive it, make sure it's all good. Should be solid after that. So the tooth is face down. There's that. All right, that guy's good to go. Put our AC belt tensioner back on. If you ever get your belts mixed up, your AC belt is going to be a 4 rib and your accessory belt for your power steering and everything is going to be a 5 rib. Drive this back down. Helps to guide the belt on this as it comes down also. Tighten this guy up. You gotta be careful with these pulleys also. If you over tighten it, accessory drive. Get our cover back on here. Everyone be stressing. No need to stress. Don't worry about a thing. Go ahead and snake this guy down. Let me bring this guy up. Put our radiator stays in. Upper radiator hose. Now, I mentioned this earlier, and it is honestly vitally important that you actually do this, and that is put these radiator hose clamps exactly where they were. Exactly, down to the T. Because it will genuinely make a difference in how the radiator hoses seal up. By putting them back, they kind of have like a memory to them if you're gonna be reusing them. So it is just important that they do go back in the same orientation. Now all we have left is the lower radiator hose and the lower radiator fan. And we can put some coolant in this thing, burp it, test drive it, make sure it's all good, and can pick it up. Because we emptied the cooling system, we now need to refill it. So I use these fun little coolant funnels. You can get them on Amazon, I'll link it below. I also have a vacuum bleeder, but don't really find a need for it. $1 gallon. This will probably take a little over 2 gallons. I have the front end of the car jacked up right now just to try to get this point a little bit higher. It's gonna make burping it a little bit easier. If you've never burped a car before, I'll show you how to do it. It's really not too hard. What you're gonna do is you're gonna turn on the car, you're gonna let it run with this funnel on here filled up. You're gonna have the heat on full blast on defrost. I don't believe it. Squeeze these hoses, air will come out, I guarantee it. Fill this up a little bit more and we are going to actually just go and start this thing. So make sure it's in park or neutral, depending on what you have. We're gonna let it run, and you guys will see air bubbles start to come out of here. And we're just gonna sit here and let it run till all the air comes out. So we're essentially just gonna let it come up to operating temp. It'll probably run for a little while to get there, but we just gotta let it get up to temp. Bubbles! bubbles. We need that thermostat to open to get all the bubbles out. Look at that, look at them all. Look at them all, look at all the bubbles, look at all the bubbles. So we're looking pretty solid. No more bubbles coming out, so we're gonna give this radiator hose a quick squeeze. Stick this guy in. Put the factory cap back on. We're gonna take it off jack stands, run it, make sure that all coolant temps are still within reasonable spec for where they should be, and then we should be done. So with that, that covers it. If you guys have any questions on how to install a timing belt on a single overhead cam, dual overhead, it doesn't matter. If you guys have any questions on any Subaru timing belt stuff, feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to get back to you. And like I said, I will link down below the tools and the parts that we use to do this job. But with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. So if you liked the video, if it helped you out, go ahead and hit that like button, turn your black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver site, and whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be able to put it in one of these corners, no idea which one quite yet. But with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.